I'm coming in because I want to talk about something that I was just watching. The proof that America is an immigrant nation is when I'm watching our news people, the ones, the people on the news people, the ones who give us their opinions, the ones who speak newsish on the regulated places where we boop, 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 tune in to hear the news, the news ones. But I keep listening to them talk about Nazi Germany, Nazi Germany, Nazi Germany, Europe. Their family histories connect to Europe. I was just listening to Julie Roginski, and she keeps talking about, and valid, very valid, the stuff that she's talking about. She's talking about personal experiences in Europe, in Russia, that kind of stuff, anecdotal stuff from people she knows and has connections to. Europe. We're in the United States of America. In the United States of America, we killed native people who were on this land. We killed them. They were the ones, not the natives, feathers. That's not what the Native Americans were. Native Americans existed. When the when the colonizers came over, they were the ones taking the scalps. They were the ones brutally hurting people, not the natives. They were not savage. Someone breaks into my home, I'm gonna fight them. I'm gonna hit them with shit that I don't want broken if I need to. You know what I'm saying? Um, yeah, that's about all I got on that. You know what I'm saying? The people were acting savage because the one thing that Europe, the colonies that came from Europe, the one thing that they do is they write. They spread propaganda. They spread a message. You dig what I'm saying? Because in Europe, they lie. You know what I'm saying? We know about Neanderthal man. Neanderthals. Yeah. When we have Neanderthals, England was like, we have to have a proto-human too. You know what I'm saying? They literally cobbled together some shit and then wrote in the news, hey, wait a second, I can remember it. Man, I read every book by everybody with the last name Leakey when I was younger. Wasn't Pei Kingman Bogman? I don't recall. Anyway, it was a hoax. They tinked together some ape shit. Let me also say, us human beings, us humans, we are in the classification of great apes. I'm 5'6". I weigh like $150. Nothing great about me. My intellect, maybe, but there's nothing great about me. So why am I here? Europe. The proof that America is full of European immigrants is the fact that we don't understand the Black experience when we are talking about now. We are watching the slave trade. ICE are slave catchers. They aren't Gestapo. They aren't secret army. They are coordinated, whereas the U.S. government is acting as the plantation owner, right? The plantation owner, the property owner, who is trying to retrieve their property. As we unravel beep, 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 all this stuff about Epstein, all the stuff that we're unraveling about Epstein is impregnating human beings against their will, taking their babies, never seeing them. You know what I'm saying? They're using people from Europe because in America, there's no documentation for them. They're taking their passports, they're taking their whatever. When these young women are coming over from young people, I don't know. I hear about the women. When the young people are coming over from Europe, their families are excited. They're going to live that American dream, to become Americans, rebuild their life. That's a European concept under the guise of what America promises. And when I say it promises, you know, Salt and Pepper, they have a whole song called Let's Talk About Sex, and they don't talk about sex. They bring awareness. That's America. America. But in reality, America is a complete hodgepodge. You know what I mean? Even when we look at Italy in the day, Italy wasn't Italy. Italy was a bunch of little nation states, and then when everybody grouped up, "Hey, Italy?" Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Same thing here. I live in Hudson Falls. I'm from Glens Falls. My kids go to Queensbury, the next the next town over. I grew up in Glens Falls. I do not like Queensbury. You know what I'm saying? But they're my neighbor. But that's also where you have people who think that they're rich, and they act like it, and they're dicks. And they're dicks. I remember driving Uber in Queensbury, and I was driving children, bro, still in high school, children telling me that I need to come to Queensbury because that's where all the money is. They're wrong. The money in our area is in Lake George, and you won't see the people who own the properties, or they live in Saratoga, where you will see the people who own the properties in August for the track season. You know what I'm saying? And that's that. We are different people. We are different constituencies. We are different cultures. Like I said, I live in Hudson Falls right now. I grew up in Glens Falls, New York. In Glens Falls, New York, I would walk everywhere. I'd ride my bike everywhere. I had a dyno comp. That was my personal bike growing up. We had skateboards, so you know what I mean? I'd be out skateboarding, ollieing over manholes. But here in Hudson Falls, it's not so much the case. In Queensbury, it's even less the case because it's sprawled out. So everything, you gotta kinda try. We all don't get along. We all need to get along. We need to have the basic tenets of humanity. You know what I'm saying? Peace, love, respect, that kind of stuff, you know? We aren't in battle with each other. We aren't in competition with each other. We are. The people, the constituencies. The people that are the people who do the dollar thing. Because the simplicity of being a citizen is making sure people got places to eat, making sure people got places to buy their commerce, medications. You know what I mean? Earn a living, run a business. That's us down here. As we move up the responsibility to the people who make decisions, the people who make budgets, what we're giving them is leeway. This individual. I have trouble with doctors, and I don't mean the personal doctor. I mean, there is a human being who's giving me medical advice because they were educated. How do I know they were educated? There's a piece of paper behind them. Boom. Hi. The school said I'm smart. Pay me. So I see that stuff. Good story. That means the school has said, we have provided education in X, Y, Z, right? Now in practice, here I am in a doctor's office, homeboy. Good morning, Mr. Doctor. Good morning, Mr. You. That doctor is likely, potentially, demographically, it's statistical that they will share MAGA-related posts. Do I trust that doctor's judgment if they are duped? The year is 2026. I'm still listening to people talk about Nazi Germany. We don't know our history. Put this into perspective consciousness, right? We keep talking about Nazi Germany because that's where our memories stop. You know what I'm saying? Not even 100 years ago, like 80 years ago, because you figure shit didn't get quashed until the 40s, and here we are in the 20s. We are in the period between World War I and World War II in the timeline. You know what I'm saying? 100 years ago. We don't remember past 80 years. You know what I'm saying? My grandparents were born in 1913. One of them, 13. 13. I think that would have been my grandmother. My grandmother was older than my grandfather. Grampy Mackmore grew up on the Mackmore farm in Whitehall. When I talked about it growing up, talked about it to my mom. They've been here since the Mayflower. It doesn't mean they actually are. It doesn't mean they were a decree. That means the Mackmore family has been in Whitehall for a hot damned minute, right? My grandparents' family, though, the Craziolas from Calabria, Italy, they, yeah, they came over here at the turn of the century. My grandmother was born in 1913. She grew up speaking English. They're in America. We speak English here until my great grandmother got like MS, Lou Gehrig's. I don't know, man. Everybody talks, but nobody would talk to me growing up. Conversation with my family was just talking. But when she started devolving, when she was getting old, um, she only spoke Italian. I can only imagine that I speak sweat hog as I get older. You know what I mean? It's just F words and mysticata. I figure that's what happens to me when I get Alzheimer's or whatever my brain goes. Um, we're not in Nazi Germany. They aren't the Gestapo. They're COINTELPRO. You know what I'm saying? American. American. Hey, but even talking about that, when World War II ended, this is horrific. This is terrible. We absorbed all the bad guys that we weren't arresting, that we weren't putting into Hillary. You know what I'm saying, dog? Hey, I listen to a guy, his name's Professor Greg Carr. Every Saturday, there's a show on the YouTube channel Narrative, Knarritive. And it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours of Professor Greg Carr. And he's name dropping personal experience, name brand Black folks in my historical timeline and putting their arm around them. Shit. Barack Obama, he got in trouble for being homeboys with Reverend Jeremiah White. Professor Greg Carr calls him Baba J. Baba being a sign of respect, like an elder, like a grandfather. You know what I'm saying? Like a parent, like an elder. Um, yeah, Baba, BABA. And he's common parlance. They made such a big deal because this black man was saying, "Goddamn America," and here we are, 2026. And what are we doing? We found out that America, Barack Obama, would speak to us and we would feel good about the things that he said. He'd make us feel good inside. He'd say sweeping things that would make us feel like we were part of the world. We were helping. But the rest of the world, we were still being bags of shit. to the fucking rest of the world. But here we are watching TV. We love our president because he's not Republican. We're being played. The U.S. Constitution is the driving force in the United States. Everything else they're doing is not. None of this is right. None of the stuff that Donald Trump is getting away with is right. But as we've listened to the Epstein dumps, we listened to Ellie Leonard, we listened to Kate Justice, Zev Shalev, these are the people that are breaking this down and coming out. Look what I found. And the more we're finding, they were still trading people. They were hunting black people. They were stealing white women. They were impregnating them. Jeffrey Epstein, yo, Hillary, you are absolutely right. I still want to sit down with Barack Obama. But as we open up the Epstein files, and when I say I'm a conspiracy guy, I go back to Stanton Friedman. I want to talk about Roswell. You know what I'm saying? New Mexico. I want to talk about that. When I watch the X-Files in rerun, I completely relate to the early conspiracy. But I relate at the end to the disenfranchisement that Fox Mulder felt, because right now, as we're opening the Epstein joint, when they're talking about what they were doing to the babies, they're impregnating these young women, mind you, just like in America with the slave trade, because as soon as a girl menstruated, you would be irresponsible to not try and take money out of the womb. Because as soon as she has a baby, that baby is generating money for you because you're getting paid to have them under your roof. Art Bell, bro. I will coast to coast AM all day. And that's what's wild. Because there's so much real history. I have a homegirl. I think she still lives down in Florida. But my favorite conspiracy, as per Art Bell, is John Teeter, time traveler. Now, this homegirl, I went to school with her in Glens Falls. She knows Larry Haber. We might have. She knows Larry Haber, the lawyer for John Teeter, time traveler, that was hired by his family in contemporary time to represent him from the future and his representations in the past. Larry Haber. Every time I start typing Facebook and socialing about this still lines up with the John Teeter timeline, she always comments in, Nick, I told you it was a hoax. I talked to the guy. I know. And this woman is my favorite part of the hoax because I revisited John Teeter. Like, I was fascinated at first. I revisited books by people who were revisiting. And in the revisit, it was just a basic Florida militiaman projecting. That's the way it read to me. But in 1998, on the IRC chats, because we didn't chat like we do now, and the IRC chats where you boop, posted a board, boop, responded, went back and checked hours, days, minutes later, boop. And that's how John Teeter was communicating with people. The theory, amongst heads like myself, conspiracy-mindeds, the theory is John Teeter was communicating with John Teeter on the boards. Because as the theory goes, it's not like Marty McFly jumps back in time and tries not to bang his mom. Marty McFly jumps through a door, and the timeline looks pretty close. Maybe your clock isn't on the left side of the bed. Maybe it's on the right. Maybe your analog clock is digital. You know what I mean? Maybe hot dogs are blue. You gonna eat it? That's your timeline. So when he moved back, 1998, John Teeter sends a fax to Coast AM. 2 o'clock. Sends a fax to Coast AM. My name is John Teeter. I'm from the year 2036. And so as this stuff goes on, that's kind of wild. Coast AM gets wild anyway. I mean, I remember there was this one dude who called out, and I just escaped Area 51. Turns out that was also a hoax. But boy, did it make for some entertaining stuff. So John Teeter, 1998, what do you watch for TV? What's TV like in the future? 1998. We don't, John Teeter's answer, we don't watch TV. We record ourselves and watch each other. Right? 1998, YouTube was invented. In 2005, TikTok, way ass later. 1998. 1998, he's talking about CERN, CERN, acronym, not me. They do science shit. They're trying to put atoms through holes smaller than the atom. CERN, the tetrahedral collidron. I think I said that right. John Teeter in 1998 was talking about that. John Teeter, why did he come back to 1998? Because it was a stop-off to get photographs that were lost in the war that happens in our current timeline. There's an American Civil War. He works for the this equivalent of the Space Force. In the future, in John Teeter's future, there is a fifth branch, or another branch, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Coast Guard. There's the branch that he's a part of, in which they travel through time, utilizing black holes that were developed at CERN in the tetrahedral collidron. And they keep these black holes in these little suitcases. So they have these little variances that they keep contained. This dude showed a picture of a freaking car that has these containers in them. The Hadron Collider. Yeah. So that's how he goes. It's a vehicle. Like, I get in my RAV4, beep, 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 time travel, or whatever. However he had it. He went back in time to get photographs for us. But what he originally was going back, the mission was to go back to the 70s to get IBM computer parts to bring back to NASA in his timeline, because IBM from the 70s speaks a language, the hardware, that modern stuff just doesn't. I don't have the answers. I'm not a scientist. I'm a dude who's repeating a story that I've heard a bunch of times. And so that's John Teeter. Comes back to the 70s to grab IBM parts, stops off in the 90s, shows up on IRC chats. He starts talking about stuff that's happening in the future. He doesn't trust big box stores like Walmart. Why do you trust these people to sell you stuff? You don't know what's in any of this stuff. You don't know what's in any of this food. He couldn't believe that we wasted so much of our property on grass? Why don't we grow our own foods? Why don't we make our own stuff? So we're asking him about his future. I say we, meaning the collectives. And he says, there's a civil war. It's called N Day. Civil war isn't like the day that lives in infamy. N Day was an ongoing tension in the United States. When people ask him about it, it wasn't the haves and the have-nots. Wait, I said that wrong. It wasn't by party. It was the haves and the have-nots. The people who had exorbitant amounts of stuff, power, influence, versus the people who are just trying to be citizens. You know what I'm saying? Just trying to exist. I'm American. I do my thing. And that was him. Him and his dad, they sell oranges up and down the coast. That was his gig. End day happened. America is attacked by Russia on the East Coast, the capital. There's a short skirmish. The result is, at the end of it, they moved the capital of the United States to Nebraska. They no longer have one swinging dick running the country, and now they have a cabinet of leadership. So within the branch is checks and balances. He talks about having a boogie bag, having a bike, dun, 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 that you can ride. Know somebody 10 miles away. Be able to ride your bike 10 miles away. The way that he talked about it in 1998, I feel like I first heard about it in like 2001, around then. Anyway, the way that he talked about it, it was in the distant future. But like I said, I got my homegirl who knows Larry Haber, the guy who's involved in John Teeter, him and his brother. We live in an intellectual world. My world is in this house, on this couch. But my concept of the world, it isn't tangible here. I have a head canon. You know what I'm saying? I have a head canon in which I hold my storyline together. So in my head canon, John Teeter exists. But in my real world, I also have space in my head canon where this person I went to school with knows Larry Haber, knows his brother, knows that they have talked about the jive. So what's my fascination with this conspiracy? Easy. It checks out. It checks out. You know what I'm saying? Our government right now is run by Israel, which is influenced by Russia. Why do I say that? The Epstein files, baby. The Epstein files, baby. In the 70s, there was an operation by the rich people in Russia who were kind of seeing the way things were going. They started moving Russian money and bodies into Israel. That was what Robert Maxwell did. That was his gig. You hear name brand folks, on news. News. You hear name brand folks saying he was an influential person. He's buried on Mount Olives, blah, blah, blah. They aren't connecting historical truth, historical fact, fact patterns. Robert Maxwell's job was to launder Russia money, Russia oligarchy into Israel. Ghislaine Maxwell was involved in that too. Jeffrey Epstein was influenced by Israel. The compromise was Israel. Ehud Barak, that was his gig, getting Russia and transferring it into the Zionist state of Israel. But we don't talk about it like that. We're still here in the United States of America saying the Gestapo, these Nazis. That's Europe. We're in America. In America, the Nazis learned from Henry Ford, the great propagandist, because that's what white people, whiteness, Europe, we have tales of dragons because European white people can't stop lying for clout. And they write it down and they tell tales, buy me mead. But they made shit up. And that's what we do with our American history. That's what we do when we're watching the news. We watch CNN, MS Now, The Bulwark, Crooked Media, Pod Save America, The Midas Touch, Adam Mockler, David Pakman, Keith Edwards. We're watching all these people watch each other and have a disjointed dialogue with people they aren't speaking to but listening to and repeating it. When I listen to black media, I was talking about my man Greg Carr earlier. You know what? No, I'm not even going to say my man Greg Carr. This is a dude who I hold such reverence for when he speaks. So Professor Carr, when he's talking, you hear about COINTELPRO. You hear about the name brand people who were involved. Jesse Jackson just passed. You hear about the impact that Jesse Jackson had on our electorate. Wait, Hillary, actually, I'm just going to jump back. Oh no, I hit things. Um, Dragons? There's this show called Common Descent. It's an anthropology podcast. And it is two young people. They're maybe not young. They sound young. And they talk about their stuff for holidays. Like especially specifically Halloween, they do spook in which they're looking at their stuff. So 2 years ago in October, they did dragons. So they covered European dragons. They covered Chinese dragons. They covered, I don't know, other dragons. And when they were covering these stuffs, they're breaking down the physiology for anthropological context. Right now, their weekly episodes are actually breaking down, like they broke down Giratina, the Pokemon. I feel like they did Lugia before that. You know what I mean? They get into some really weird shit. Like, I mean, it's like a 2-hour podcast, and the first 45 minutes is them just rattling off news that's anthropology related. It is so wonky. If you aren't into it, it's not worth it. But yeah, I love it. Dragons. Dragons are interpretive. I will go with that. All pterodactyls, I'm okay with that. But then again, we're going back to how we're talking about things. Pterodactyls may be dragons. I live by Lake Champlain. We have our own Loch Ness monster called Champ. And by any accounts, I mean, outside of sensationalism, The Loch Ness Monster and Champ are likely pliosaurs. Even if you break down the history, it is something else. European dragons, for example. There were towns that had the head of a dragon in the center of town. It was a rhinoceros. People that don't know things have a trust for people that talk to them. We blindly open our boop TVs and we listen to our friends. If I say Nicole Wallace, I love Nicole. If I say Tim Miller, if I say Rachel Maddow, I love Rachel. They love these people. I'm going to give deference to Rachel Maddow. She's an extraordinary person, made the hugest impact on MSNBC, so much that they wrapped themselves in her concept. But that time has come and gone. When she started dropping ultra, wholly amazing things, she stopped being the TV news guy. She started being the historian author. I don't watch her show in a day. I don't watch clips. I don't watch Lawrence. I don't watch Deadline White House because they stopped being news. They started being preachy. They don't give the context. Rachel is always going to give context. There are 24 hours of MS Now. And in it, Lawrence has value, Rachel has value, and everybody else is hired to be a personality so that you trust the shit that comes out of their mouths. I was just listening to Mayday Network. That's actually what I did when I went live. I was listening to Mayday. And I'm listening to Julie Roginski, no ill will of mine towards what she was saying. She's from Russia. She's a Jew. She's an immigrant. She has her American experience, her familial experience, her dialogue with family as they talk about. She has her history. She talks about Gestapo. She talks about Nazis. And I 100% get that. But she's talking to Americans. And the more that she talks about the Holocaust, the more that she talks about the SS, the Gestapo, Poland, Auschwitz, the less she's talking about America and the more she's talking about Europe. I appreciate that she is knowledgeable about European history and what we brought back to us by bringing in the people that were making the gases and building the bombs and killing Americans. But we want to know what was in their head for us. So thank you, Julie, for recognizing European history. We are in America. The American experience is Black, brown, and indigenous. The rest of us are in on an op. We're on an op. The money never stopped being money. I live 45 minutes from Albany, New York. And when I hear about the corruption in DC, I feel a kinship because that's homegrown in Albany, New York. You know what I'm saying? There's New York City corruption, but Albany is the capital of New York. When Mamdani is talking to the people in New York City, he's speaking through Kathy Hochul in Albany. Mamdani in New York City, before he was Mamdani in New York City, was Mom Donnie, who was going over to Lark Street to get his slices of pizza. You dig what I'm saying? New York is New York. Albany, New York used to be the center of the world. Schenectady, New York. Troy, New York. Matter of fact, Schenectady. I love Schenectady. GE was in Schenectady. Yeah, GE still is in Schenectady, I believe. Yeah. Schenectady, Troy, Albany. What I love about Troy is there's so much red brick in Troy, New York, birthplace of Uncle Sam. But there's so much historical area in Troy, New York that's protected, so you don't get the franchises coming in and destroying stuff. It's a lot more local and home. Actually, one of my favorite things, and this is kind of weird, with brick, there's always deterioration, especially old brick. So you see little chunks of the smog darkened brick that break off and crumble. And so you have this vibrant, orangey, deep red, deep orange. And when the light hits it just right, the orange pops. And it contrasts, and spring specifically my jam, because you start getting all the pops of a bright, vibrant green against the little spots of bright, vibrant, burnt orange, you know? But I think that's where my visual palette, history. Corruption is homegrown to my area, and we gave it to everybody else. It's not unique to Albany. Because again, if you're a student of American history, and I don't mean when you went to school, open up to page 52. I don't mean American history. That was a lie. That was a lie. Everything is a fucking lie. So you need to read for yourself. Who do you read from? You read from the survivors. Survivor-centric history is more accurate. Because if you listen to our taught history, and when I say our taught history, I was just listening to the Mayday Network, and they repeat historical events. They say historical names. None of them are American. None of them are Black. None of them are recognizing Black people. Americans. Black people are treated separate. So separate that because they don't see their representation on TV, Joy Reid is a big deal right now because she's where Black America is going when they feel spurned by MS now. But that's not just her. They already know about Roland Martin. So people go to the Black Star Network to support Black journalism. You know, and I say it, and I always feel like I spin off, and I'm not denigrating Jasmine Crockett. I'm not denigrating Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. But they are two amazing American Black women who grew up in America and reached exceptional pinnacles of representation of their life path. They're not exceptional in the sense that they're unique. They're exceptional in the fact that this is the product that Black America puts out in spite of taking opportunities, in spite of DEI for the white folks. Because if you got me, upstate New York, let me change my hat so I look more white. If I'm in upstate New York, and around here, this is at least Stephanic's district, people are wearing their camouflage stuff just to go to the store. People are wearing, their fishing stuff just to go to the store because it's on their gear. If me, Nick G, shows up looking like this, and somebody else shows up who is black, who is dressing to their culture, to nothing that has anything to do with anybody doing their thing. We're all representative of the culture we're in. In this area, I'm getting that gig over homeboy. Full stop. And that's not me having a prejudice. That's me speaking on a fact pattern. We elected Elise Stefanik. Now, that doesn't speak on the gentleman's ability, skills, knowledge, capability. That's America. That's our America. Because we don't acknowledge the diversity of culture. That's even me. Me. There are people who look exactly like me. Yo, that's dope. I mean, well, first of all, like I say, I'm upstate New York. My laugh factor in my head about upstate New York, my area, is Hootie and the Blowfish frontman Darius Rucker from South Carolina. He says on the Questlove Supreme podcast, he said he grew up in the South. And when I say South Carolina, know that blackness in America started in South Carolina. That is the beginning of the Gullah Geechee corridor. Anyway, South Carolina native said he never experienced racism the way that he had until he came to upstate New York. When I was growing up, the North was accepting of black folks. No. The reason that the North split from the South, as far as that whole thing, industry was in the North. They were running good, logical business within the corruption that they've established, but business made sense. In the South, business did not make sense. It's all good old boy. It's all influence. Our government right now, as it's being run, because we're in America and not Nazi Germany, America, with its own history, its own fact patterns, because we're in America, our government right now is being run as if the Confederates were in it. And that brings me back to my point. People weren't running business. They were appointing their brother-in-law. They were appointing their uncle's dog that their mom made them put on the board. Why would you hire a dog? Because mom said so. The chattel trade, as Donald Trump is involved in, right now, he may not be getting kickbacks, but we've built this organization around him. He's not the brains. He's the stick jammed in the door so it don't close. You know what I'm saying? He's the bit of wax put in the door jamb so even though it's locked, you can still open it. He's nobody. His whole gig, and this is the way he makes money, his whole gig is to have a business, crash the business, and he makes money off of the crash. He made money in '87. He made money. When was another crash? 90? No. Was the next crash 2000? No, there was one in the 90s. Anyway, 2008, he made money. As we're crashing now, AI and crypto is about to shit the bed. They are gonna make money. There's a window of time that is missing from the Epstein files. And it's not like there's a lot missing. There's a window of time in the Epstein files that doesn't exist. And that's the time around 9/11. I'm a conspiracy dude. That's why I'm here. That's why I get so wild when I'm watching the news and they're talking about European history, German history, Nazi history, because we got a bunch of traitors in America, French history, because our Vichy Congress gave all this away. Gave it. But in American history, we steal people. We hunt people. We kill people. People in their homes still have relics of black men and women who were hanged, killed, or otherwise deceased. And people kept parts of their body as souvenirs. People would get out of freaking church, watch a hanging, and cut off pieces of the dead body. Sometimes the body wouldn't even be dead. And then they'd go to a picnic, a potluck. This is America. This is not Nazi Germany. They learned it from watching you, Dad. Truth. Henry Ford. Adolf Hitler is on the tip of everybody's motherfucking tongue. And Adolf Hitler had a picture of Henry Ford behind him on the wall. All of Germany, all of the Nazi region had an image of Hitler on their wall, and Adolf Hitler had a picture of Henry Ford on his. American propaganda, right? Even Nazi Germany was performing American tasks. They were killing people. They were stealing people. They were raping people. They were forcing labor. They were forcing reproduction by children. Eugenics. Fucking eugenics. Now, when I think about eugenics, I'm a Star Trek head. I think of Noonien Soon. I think of the Augments. I think of those poor Klingons who thought they were bettering their race and all of a sudden had smooth heads because they were fucking with eugenics. But that's not eugenics. You ever been watching like black media? And I don't mean like the news. You know what I mean? I grew up watching, I was born in 77. Me and rap music are siblings. We were born around the same time. Sometimes we'd hang, sometimes we won't. But me and rap have lived our lives together. I don't know if you ever heard the song by Common. I used to love her, Her, hearing every rhyme. And in the song, I'm not going to do it justice. I'm not even going to spit. But in the song, he's documenting this was rap, this was rap, this was rap. So he's presenting it as a woman who was his friend. And as time went on, she got into different gigs. She was different people. I used to love hearing every rhyme. That's me. That's America. We were one way and we evolved, and we're still another way and we evolved, and we're still another way and we evolved. I grew up listening to Spike Lee. Spike Lee movies, Do the Right Thing. I know, no, I was like 13 years old. I walked down to the video store and rented Do the Right Thing. Work it, man, it won't work it, man, it won't work it, man, it won't work. Oh, fight the power. So I'm watching Rosie Perez duke it out. The person that I am today, when I watch Do the Right Thing by Spike Lee, there's a section of everybody in me. I mean, I'm talking from Sal. I'm talking from Big Dick Willie. I'm talking about bugging out. My man, did you just step on my new Jordans? I think about Radio Raheem. Let me tell you about love and hate. If I hate you, I hate you. If I love you, they killed Radio Raheem. There isn't a time in the day where I don't feel a tension where my brain cannon sees Mookie throwing the garbage can. Boop. Let me finish about Spike Lee. Throwing that garbage can through Sal's famous. To break that tension. We can't just keep doing this. We all eat pizza. Now we don't have a pizza joint. Hillary, you want to talk about Crush Groove. I want to talk about Crush Groove. I want to talk about Wild Style. I want to talk about breakdancing. I want to talk about B-boys. Do you know the song Cookie Puss was banned in my house because I wouldn't stop playing it? So when we break back, man, this is a long walk from American history and how we are America and we are not Nazi Germany. But I'm willing to take this walk. I was in the Crush Groove. I remember the first time that I saw Curtis Blow video, Basketball. I had a neighbor who had just moved to my neighborhood from the Bronx. His name was Curtis. My name is Curtis B. And don't you know, I'm rocking on the mic and I'm on your radio. And then I see this video of Curtis Blow. And I'm like, oh, Curtis Blow led to the more mainstream things. Like, I think there was a John Cusack movie that had License to Drive. DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince. I think this song is like Jazzy's Groove. I don't, it was an almost obscure one. Like, I was like, I never caught it. But that was in real time. I grew up with rap music. I grew up learning about black folks. While the Cosby kids were talking about their culture, Bill Cosby was teaching me black culture. 1 second. Teens. Greetings, teens. I am live on Substack. I am speaking to the literal planet. Would you like to say anything? Very well. No one wanted to hear from you anyway. I hope y'all have a fantastic day of school. Welcome home. Rap music was marketed as a style, a trend. The music was starting to catch on. But that's like everything in America. All of a sudden, boop, we have a thing. And then Good Morning America, every news, morning show. Man, gosh, there's this new trend happening. Bro, my kids, I started having my kids like in my 30s. So my oldest is in his 20s. I have a separate mom. I have two moms. My youngest is 7. That's with that mom. With the first mom, my youngest is 13. and they don't know anything that I'm talking about because, young people know they don't care about old people. Um, I was raised by Bill Cosby. I have tr with who Bill Cosby is now in social because I was raised by picture pages. I was raised by Fat Albert. Um, I was raised by his records. I was raised by specifically The Cosby Show. When I'm a sample head, like, that's my era of rap, you know what I'm saying? When it stopped being about the sample, I stopped being interested. Eh, they weren't talking to me anymore, man. Do you know what I'm saying? I was into it. There's this TV show called The Get Down. The Get Down takes place in early '80s? Late '70s, because disco's still big. So, in the history of the boroughs, you have Kool Herc. DJ Kool Herc, Sedgwick Avenue, he's DJing, just wanted to have a safe space where everybody could get down. In popular culture, we speak about that as if it was something that just happened, an event. I want to present to you house music. Oh, you don't know about house music? That means it wasn't played in your house growing up, so you wouldn't know about it. I'm not talking about the stuff the house music that I was jamming out to in LA. I'm not talking about the house music that I was jamming out to in Japan. I'm talking about Gwen Guthrie. I'm talking about post disco. It got labeled as groove because disco was a bad word. Why was disco a bad word? Because white people weren't allowed in the disco as white people. You had equality. You're in the club. You're doing club things. We're here to party. We're here to partake. We're here to be able to be ourselves out loud. That's where house music comes from. Oppression. We talk about Stonewall. You know what I'm saying? We all hate Gloria Gaynor now because she, benefited MAGA, but I associate Stonewall and Gloria Gaynor because I will survive. When I was in LA, I met drag queens. Like, I'm in club scene. You're going to meet them. You're going to meet dinosaurs. You're going to meet aliens. But that's the club scene. That's the underground house music scene. Because you don't want John Q. Public coming in and being around. Because John Q. Public are the same people that I critique all the time on the news. They're the normies. That for some reason we turn on our TV and we watch these normies and it's not real. They don't exist in a real space. I met some of the strongest people in LA in drag queens. I would watch after the party, you go eat. That's what you do. And there's honey and all this other stuff. You okay? Hillary, you are speaking my language. That's my era. I was in LA when raves were actually underground. You know what I'm saying? Where you had to find the poster. You had to go to a location. You had to say the thing, and then you had to listen for where the beat was coming from. Now we just play music. You can find any children's show where they'll put a thing up to the ear. In fact, I did. Wow. I left in 2000. That's when I left LA to come back home. And I went from being around this amazing scene, this amazing community back here to upstate New York. Wow. You just you blew my mind, you know what I mean? You just pulled a different character that I was, because at that time, I wasn't Nick G, a dude on the couch. I was the Reverend Jealousy Jackson, and I always wore red. Dang. We were different people. We were characters. Why was I the Reverend Jealousy Jackson? Because what the Rev was out doing, Nick Guyette wasn't involved in. You know what I'm saying? I was a character. I was part of a scene. I was a vibe. There was this one dude I used to hang with. His name was Enigma. He had a very, at the time, I recognized the way he dressed, thinking about like Prince, because it was all purple, it was all flowy. But in 2026, when I think about my guy, it was like he dressed like Dave Chappelle dressed as Prince. That's like I see him now, but he wouldn't talk to you directly. It was a gimmick. Hey man, how you feeling right now? How you feeling? Everything you would ask would come back as a question. And he'd do that, liquid, like he was always carrying a ball, that kind of thing. And you know what I mean? That was his method of expression. What you didn't get, the dude with the plaid button down, with the baseball cap and the jeans, standing holding his drink. The club scene is Narnia. The club scene, I talk about it myself. I meet people who will speak to me of the moment that X, Y, and Z happened and they felt God. They felt that connection. I was on a dance floor. In the beginning, there was Jack, and Jack had a groove. And from that groove came the groove of all grooves. I say it, I get chills. When I hear it, my eyes get weepy. When I'm listening to songs like Love and Happiness, ooh, I don't hear them. I feel them. I listen to a lot of like acid house, a lot of stuff. My big kick right now is book club radio. I love JoJo and Tinzo. I have a tendency to lean more towards a Tinzo mix because sometimes I feel like JoJo goes a little bit more aggressive where it sounds a little bit more like a DJ Irene happy hardcore. Boom, 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 boom. What am I listening for? I want to hear those tones. God, I want to hear those tones. The ones that reach down and low right here. I want the ones that are high right there. Hey, Hillary, only because I love it and I love promoting things. I'll tell you about Book Club Radio. Book Club Radio. JoJo, the DJ, when COVID happened, he was able to just get a spot above a business where he's got no walls that share with anybody. So he set up his system and he DJ boom, 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 boom. And he kind of started doing pregame before he'd go out to the club. He talked to his sister Tinzo and got her moving in down the block. So they started having their little jams up in his spot and they started recording it and they made the book club manifesto. I feel like book club radio, another thing like it previously was Boiler Club. No, not Boiler Room. Was the Boiler Room was another YouTube oriented. But anyway, book club radio, the book club manifesto. No phones. Don't just stand and watch the DJ face each other. Have a good time. Dance. And so, For me and Hillary, we were talking house music. House is a feeling. When I'm listening to house and a DJ, doom, 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 you always got your beat. You're going to have your hi-hat. And you're going to get down with that. But when I'm listening to a DJ, we're in church. When you go to a church, you go to the building, you sit in the pew. Homeboy, home person, opens their book, and they tell you about John, speaking about the coming of Jesus. And you're like, yes. They speak about Job, the man who had it all, but because of his faith being tested, lost it. So he sits in his poverty with faith. I will not decry you. You know the story? You want to hear it because that connects you to everybody. But when I'm listening to house music, I do want to hear Gwen Guthrie. I do want to hear they calling again, they're night crawlers. I want to feel connected to Chicago, the warehouse. I want to feel connected to Detroit. And when I talk about church, I want to feel connected to Larry Levan in Paradise Garage, because everything after that just becomes let me think. Yeah, UDM. EDM is 2026 speak for electronic music. UDM, Universal Dance Music. What are you listening to when you're listening to house? You're listening to Congo. You're listening to Spanish guitar. You're listening to trance. You're listening to gospel. You're listening to Zulu beats. You're listening to African voices. You're listening to music, sounds that aren't put on a shelf with a sign, with a genre. Going back to what we were talking about, when I used to buy rap records, I bought my Fat Boys record from the disco section at the record store. Disco. There was no rap. It was disco. In fact, the Fat Boys, as I just referenced, they they were called the Disco 3. And Rick Rubin says, disco's out, bro. And that's how they became the Fat Boys. And that's how we started talking about Crush Groove. When LL Cool J, boom, 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 sets down that boombox, box. That's rap. Funny thing about LL Cool J, and I'll go into it also about Will Smith. In 2026, we associate the path of hip hop as being through drugs, drug dealers. Questlove's Amir Johnson, he wrote his book, Rap is History. And his chapters are named after the drug that drove that era. It's not chapter 1. It's coke. It's not chapter 2. It's crack. LL Cool J and Will Smith, they were making money. The only people that could hang with them on a financial scale were drug dealers, because that was the comparative money that was being made. The people who could afford to put somebody in a studio were drug dealers. But that's where disco met the street, because disco is the club. Everybody's dancing, everybody's vibing, everybody's having a good time. But then you had rap. We use words like the cipher, words bond. They refer to each other as God. What happened is the common parlance of disco absorbed the street language of the 5% nation. We had no business. We had no business saying the things we were saying. I can go on and on about how offensive I see now Vanilla Ice was. You know what I'm saying? But why do I say that? Because we don't understand culture. Because we don't understand our history. Black folks finally had a platform to speak to other Black folks. But instead of letting it be a historical lesson, it got turned into Nick G, a dude in 1987, a kid, naive to the world. Only been around, like I had a Black friend, not in that way. That was just all the Black people I had until my neighbor moved in next door and he was Black from the Bronx. My Black friend, I feel weird saying it, he had a white mom. I don't believe in my life I ever met his dad. I still, like, he still exists, the dude. But he wasn't my Black friend. He was Brad. Matter of fact, I remember one time he hit his head and it had a cut. I couldn't eat lunch because we had like prunes or whatever, and I was like, oh, it reminded me of his cut head. Not that it had anything to do with Brad, not race, anything. That's just a memory that popped out. When I started listening to rap, I wasn't around Black people. You know what I mean? Like at all. What I interpreted from TV, what I interpreted from, and my dad actually. My dad, my mom actually makes a joke. I don't understand what's with you guys and your Black people. My dad was really into Richard Pryor. In my head, my dad looked like Richard Pryor until I got old enough to differentiate. Just because they got the fro and the mustache doesn't mean they're the same dude. But I grew up watching Black people. My dad loved the word motherfucker. He, so his record collection had Bill Cosby, had Richard Pryor. I personally watched all the blaxploitation that I could find on a Sunday or Saturday matinee on Fox or WPIX because that was culture I didn't have. So when I started listening to rap music, I'm starting to listen. And I'm not talking about young MC and don't just stand there, bust a move, which is dope. I realized that I was being taught with hip hop, but not everybody's into the lesson. You know what I'm saying? What fascinated me, I was a native tongue guy. So the sample era is my shit. I'm going to bring this back to Bill Cosby real quick. Bill Cosby has an episode of The Cosby Show where he's stuck at the house and he wants one specific copy of A Night in Tunisia. A couple years back, I wanted to really dive into what the samples were that created my life because I listened to a lot of music and they would drop the N-bomb and they'd say these things and they weren't speaking to me, but the music was speaking to me. I wanted to hear the music. So on Spotify, I looked up A Night in Tunisia, the only jazz song that I knew the name of because of this episode with The Cosby Show. And that's how it started. From A Night in Tunisia, I started getting into the Blackbirds. I started getting into Cal Jader. I started getting into Bob James. Night at the Mardi Gras. As a matter of fact, Night at the Mardi Gras, if you've ever heard the song Peter Piper by Run DMC, that break with the bells is Bob James. Once I started hearing the samples, I stopped hearing rap because they weren't talking to me, and this is in the modern era. They weren't talking to me, but Bob James was talking to me. The first time I heard Cal Tjader Aquarius, I realized A Tribe Called Quest Midnight Marauders, Cal Tjader's Aquarius is the bumper in between each song in Midnight Marauders. I fell in love with Cal Tjader. Tjader, Cal Tjader. Maybe it's pronounced different. I read it. It's phonetic. I'll turn you off. Wow. I just realized I've been talking for more than an hour because 2 alarms have gone off. I'm going to bring it back full circle to what I was talking about. American history. I started talking about rap music because it was through rap music in the 90s that I say specifically the 90s because once Bad Boy took over in 2000, we were in the Epstein class of rap. I'm done talking about it. In 2000, I was into house music because house music was speaking to me. The N-bomb, extreme amounts of money being blown, the sexism, the rape culture that rap music became really puts me off to this day because there's no history in it. There's ignorance, there's jingoism. It's what Scantron built by giving data to record companies saying this is what white people want to buy. Like as I say that, I think about the Far Side. They have this, can you bug your eyes out a little bit? You know, I think about I'm getting wild. I think about a lot of things. I learned history because of rap. When people are talking about different points in American history, you could go through rap, conscious kind of rap, and you could almost take it reference for reference and find cultural history with it. Not that we do. How do we explore music? Hey, it's a history lesson. It's a history lesson when Biggie's like, oh, like flight 503, 103, whatever the lyric is. Look it up. When Guru from Gangstar says some things, look it up. When Nas says some things, look it up. That's what I did. Do. But now I'm in a place where I'm not listening to music for my history. I'm in a place where I'm listening to history, starting with Michael Harriot, starting with Professor Greg Carr, starting with Professor Karen Hunter, starting with Lurie Daniel Favors on Urban View, starting with the Bad Faith podcast with Brianna Joy Gray, starting with Sabby Sabs, Sabrina Selbati, starting with Amanda Land, Amanda Seals, who is not everybody's flavor. But if you can focus on the Pee Wee's Playhouse of Amanda Land and listen to who she brings in, the perspective that she brings in, you almost feel disheartened because you've been duped. I just named off not mainstream media that will inform you about American history. And they will not. I just named a fuck ton of black people. They don't talk about Nazi Germany. They don't talk about the Holocaust. They talk about Jim Crow, COINTELPRO. They talk about sharecropping. They talk about the Gullah Geechee corridor. They talk about abolition. What does our mainstream media talk to? The Democrats need to do the thing. What are the Democrats doing wrong? The polling says this. These polls are dropping. Who are they teaching? Who are they talking to? I'm going to finish on this one point. There was this dude, I want to say maybe 2006, maybe 2009. Yeah, it was like during the McCain Obama joint. And he's a 13-year-old kid. And he's going to, like the conservative stuff, CPAC. He's going to CPAC. He's speaking at CPAC. This 13-year-old kid got his suit, got his hair cut. And he goes and he says these things that he'd heard from Fox and Republican media. I will not say conservative because that's like calling a fat man tiny because everybody calls him tiny. Anybody who calls a Republican a conservative can go fuck themselves because they're discounted. So this kid, he goes up and he says all of the Republican things and they link together and they make sense to them. They don't make sense to me because, whew, that contained the same amount of truth. He goes up there, he speaks. So when I'm listening to the people, when I'm listening to Sarah Longwell, Tim Miller, Nicole Wallace, when I'm listening to the name brand people who progressives tune into, and they're speaking to, mind you, the only reason they stopped being Republican was because Donald Trump. The brand of Republican that they learned to be was by watching TV like this kid who would regurgitate this stuff. Mind you, in 2026, that kid is embarrassed for what he did, embarrassed for what he said, embarrassed for how he was rolled out as this wonderkind. He was a Muppet. He was used. When I'm watching The Bulwark, Pod Save, MS Now, CNN, breaks my heart to say it because I want them to be better. The Mayday Network. And I'm going to eviscerate Midas Touch. Midas Touch is not news. They're white people. They're white people who are going to get white people elected because they don't diversify their understanding of history. As I'm saying, they watch white people media. They network with their white people media friends who they watch. Hey, I've been wanting to meet with you a long time. I've been watching your show. Because you can give a message. I'm a dude. I'm on a couch. I press record. I have people watching. We're dialoguing in the Chizat. Because you have people that are willing to tune in doesn't mean that what you're saying is quality. Doesn't mean that it needs to be repeated 12, 15 times a day. I'm processing. Because if I don't do this, I'm just going to do this. You know what I'm saying? You think about when Trump, the first year it happened with Trump, we got all our podcasts and YouTube shows, people who were spurned by Trump, processing it together. And that's what I'm doing. I'm a citizen. One. I am unique to me. One. There is no Democrat. There's no Republican. There's no imaginary third party. that's independent. Independent means not affiliated. To register into an independent party, this is the independent party. Come on. It's a sham. It's jive. They're locking you in to a party, which means you're no longer independent. When you are part of something that is big enough that it takes your name away because it has a larger name, it's too big. It's too big. In this house, we're a family, but I'm Nick, and that's Raven, and that's Layla, and that's Amelia. And we together can't decide what we need for dinner tonight. Sometimes we just go with girl dinner, which means grab a motherfucking growl. Full circle. We're in America. We are not in Europe. We have American history that we exported to Europe that created the Holocaust. That is separate from America. In America, we killed Native people. We built bases to protect us from the people who are trying to exist as birds do outside, as bears do outside, as trees do outside, as fish do in the ocean. But white people came into America. They stole history. They stole lives. They stole flesh off of living people's bodies. When people talk about the dozens, I don't know if you've ever been in places where you rank on folks. Your mama's so fat. You're so ugly, you got two eyes of the different shapes. The dozens. The dozens comes from eugenics. Because they would get this highly muscular and intelligent, not human, and breed them with this other not human who has virtues of her own. And they would breed that for a harder working, faster thinking, quicker responsive baby, not human, that they could sell for money. Because mind you, the more not humans that they had on the land, the more money they were valued at. So when we're talking about the dozens and we're talking about eugenics, they're picking out the good people, not human. And they're getting rid of the shitty ones, but you could buy a dozen of the shitty ones who were too skinny, who had bad eyesight. You know what I'm saying? Who may have had mental declinations. You know what I'm saying? Eugenics. That's America. Open up. What's coming out with the Epstein joint? Eugenics. In America. You dig what I'm saying? I am begging. Media America to shut the fuck up about Europe. We are in America with chattel slavery, with spying on the citizens, with selling children that we steal from parents, enslaving people and using their capabilities as cheap labor because when they can't get scumbags to work for ICE, they're making people who are imprisoned run the facility. This isn't Nazi Germany. This is the United States of America. And if you are white, your American history is being a piece of shit. I'm not white. I am an American. I am an American citizen who comes from immigrants with European heritage. I will never be white. You dig? It's a mindset. It's a sickness. If you have no idea of where you've come from, you have no idea where you are going. Sankofa. Go back and get it. I'm dipping out. I'm not going to be that 2-hour talking daddy. But I am going to, before I leave, hold on, I'm trying new things. I'm going to share my screen because this is my world. I write a lot. I think about things. When I see something that I want to share, I share that. I write my own posts. I set myself a goal. I fail often. I set myself a goal to write a piece a day. The other day, I wrote 3 pieces. And as I wrote my 3 pieces, I started 2 others. And Substack has given me an opportunity that I never had before. And I'm enjoying connecting with people. I'm enjoying connecting with other creatives. I keep saying that Instagram is for pretty people. Substack is for creatives. And I couldn't be happier. Incidentally, I'm out. This is a peace time. I'm Nick G. I'm a dude on the couch. If you plant me, I grow. If you're going to believe in someone, why not believe in me?